Chris and I spend our summers on road trips in our Honda Pilot microcamper, sleeping in our SUV every night. We stay close to cities, on lakes that can only be visited after driving hours down a rough logging road, and near national parks. So how do we figure out where to go? And how do we plan our road trips? Hey everyone, I'm Emily. Chris and I travel the world full time. This summer, we're traveling in our Honda Pilot microcamper, camping our way through beautiful British Columbia. These are 5 things that we consider when we're planning our road trips. Number 1, pick a direction. We don't like to plan too much, but when we head out in our camper, we like to know which direction we're heading. Last summer, we headed up north to Yukon and Alaska. Then in the fall, we headed down south to Utah and the Mighty 5 parks, and then to a friend's wedding in Las Vegas. For this summer, we've decided to head east into BC's interior. Because Chris and I are Canadian, we qualify for our country's healthcare system, but only if we spend 5 months a year in our province of British Columbia. And so this summer, for our road trip, we're going to be exploring beautiful BC. So now that we've figured out the general direction of our road trip into BC's interior, we're on to step number 2, figuring out the length and duration of the drive. The general rule that I highly recommend is not to average more than 2 hours of driving for each day that you're on your road trip. So if you're going away for 7 days but you're planning a round trip, you want to pick a destination that's no more than 7 hours away. Then you get 7 hours going one way, 7 hours coming back, and you average no more than 2 hours a day worth of driving. Anything above 2 hours, I find, just gets really long. Also, depending on where you're going, don't forget to download Google Maps or whatever your favorite mapping app is before you leave. Roads are pretty good and they usually have cell service on them, but they don't always. And so you want to make sure that you have that map downloaded on your phone so you can use it even without cell service. On to number 3, plan a little, but not too much. Chris and I like to have a general direction for where we're headed, but we don't want to have a really strict schedule. We like to be open to spend different nights in different places, spend more than one night in a place we really like, skip over something that we thought would be awesome but really was just okay, and we want to just be able to go at our own pace. We do like to have a few things planned, like for example, last fall when we did our trip to Utah, Arizona, and Nevada, we knew we had to be in Vegas for a friend's wedding, and so that date was set and everything else had to fit around that. For this summer's trip to BC's interior, we know that we're going to be meeting friends in a few different spots, so we need to make sure we hit those dates. Also, this isn't a big consideration for this trip into the interior, but often we also need to consider if we're going somewhere really busy, if we need to book ahead of time. Like for example, on some of the national parks, you need to reserve your spot ahead of time. But in general, we like to be free to explore and we don't want to have a super tight schedule. But in saying that, you might be saying to me, well, Emily, what about our accommodations? Things get really busy in the summer. And that's true, which brings me to thing number 4, accommodations. If you've been watching our videos, you know that Chris and I don't like to pay for accommodations, and so we don't book anything ahead of time. Because we sleep in our Honda Pilot microcamper, we pretty much just look for a spot to stay at the end of each day. And we use apps, maps, and word of mouth to figure out where a good spot to spend the night might be. But if you are planning on staying in a campground or booking a hotel for the night, you might want to consider booking a few nights ahead of time because things can get really busy in the summertime. And on to the last thing to consider for a road trip is your food. If you've been watching our videos, you know that Chris and I are frugal travelers and we do not want to spend a lot of money eating out. We usually carry about 2 to 3 days worth of food in our cooler and in our dry goods section of our microcamper. And whenever we're in an area with a grocery store with reasonable prices, we stock up and add to our supply. And then if we're in a small town that sells some local treats, we might pick those up too. And those are 5 things to consider when you're planning a road trip. If you have any other suggestions, please share them with us in the comments, and we look forward to seeing you in our upcoming videos as we drive through BC's interior.